Welcome to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast series. In this podcast, we will leave the floor to experts in the industry on specific relevant topics. During this series, animated by Janssen Belgium, you will hear different views on how Flemish and the Walloon biopharma ecosystems could reinforce each other to strengthen the position of Belgium globally. The speakers will deep dive into three important strategic axes: the chase for talent, the chase for innovation, and the chase for a supportive environment. This panel exists of Vincent Gauzin, Managing Director of WellBio, Baudouin Rigaud, Advisor of Secretary of State Thomas Dermine, and Philippe de Noël, Head of External R&D Vaccines, as well as Sonia Willems, Strategic Director of Janssen Benelux. How can we identify and reinforce the necessary bridges between the Flemish and Walloon ecosystems to strengthen the Belgian position globally? How can Belgium become the health and biotech valley of tomorrow?
Baudouin Rigaud, Advisor of Secretary of State Thomas Dermine.
More than happy to try to comment. But as you said earlier, I'm Baudouin Rigaud working for State Secretary Thomas Dermine, so it's at the federal level.
Yeah.
And Thomas has been in charge of the recovery plan, but it is also true that we are also fully involved in the Premier initiative for making Belgium biotech valley or something like that, if I'm not mistaken for the exact title. And so we kind of are working every day on those questions. Let me just kind of, if I look at the theme that you're asking, there's really several sub-themes. It starts, of course, with the broader scheme, which is how to make those two ecosystems reinforce each other. And well, we have to start with the view that it is already a very successful ecosystem as it is. I mean, the expertise, our assets are recognized across borders. Talent, you mentioned it, Monsieur de Noël, shares capabilities, clinical trial, that's something that wasn't mentioned here, but it's a strength. It's still being attacked or challenged by other member states, but still something that is very good. The manufacturing process is absolutely been a recent success story that has been very much revealed by the success around the vaccines during the pandemics. So there's probably a few things that we are doing right as a whole. What is also remarkable is that actually the strength of the ecosystem can be found both in the north and in the south, and that's not the case for all sectors, to say the least. So that is worth mentioning. And so indeed, it is for us an exciting thought to think of combining the strengths of both and creating even more growth in successes. Now, how can we do that? Frankly, the actors on the field are better placed. No, I do understand that there are complementarities that exist. There might be very strong strengths in some discovery capabilities in biotech in the north. I think we might have some strengths a bit more towards the south, but I'm sure there's much more nuances to be brought on that depending on the technologies and the therapeutic areas than this. So this is very much a call for everybody, and this initiative is great for everybody. Being university researcher, supplies manager, ecosystem manager, Mr. de Noël, or others, to just look on the other side of the country and really reach out for this. So that is clearly something. There's a few things we're doing right, and that leads me to the second point, which is then what is the role of the public service in there, and frankly, of the public authorities. I like to start with a point of humility. We first have to recognize that success has been built exactly by those people that I just mentioned. So it's, of course, the researchers, so of course the entrepreneurs taking risk, of course is the supply managers, and so on and so forth, that actually have made it a success. And it is sometimes, if you're not humble enough, too easy to fall into the thought that, well, as a public authority, you can decide. And I don't think you control and command innovation. I think innovation happens. You have to build the right ecosystem for this to happen. But controlling it and commanding it, not very successful. Knowing which innovation is right, which research path is right. Who am I to kind of know better than each of the researcher themselves? And actually, even the researcher themselves, not one of them has the answer. The reality is that the market is a trial and error phenomenon, and would I be well placed as a public authority to place a bet on either this company or this research area or this therapeutic area? Frankly, I don't think that's how it happens. I think it is that ecosystem that is vibrant, that has lots of trial and errors, that actually has been successful. We see that in Belgium. I actually have been studying in Stanford in the Silicon Valley. So I'm actually excited to see that it's happening also here on my doorsteps. And that's that vibration that I think is making a success. So let's be humble about this. Let's figure out what is the role of public authorities. And this is, as I just said, in that ecosystem, you have a garden, you want to make sure the plants grow and they do what they do best. You make sure there's enough water, there's enough sun. You make sure that the leaves are removed and there's a good equilibrium. This is kind of the framework condition you have to work on. And it turns out that of the things you mentioned, actually there's quite a few things that public authorities de facto could be influencing, of course, for the better. You mentioned talent. That's clearly, for me, it's number one. Of that I tend to believe it has been one of the key success factors for Belgium in the past. So that definitely remains something that is key, for which, of course, public authorities in Belgium have a huge role to play. I'm very happy to hear concrete proposals. That's clearly something that can be brought in, of course, by the competent authorities. That's not the federal level, but still, we hear it. Supporting research, of course, has been something very well understood, especially fundamental research, when it's not too applied yet. No, it's not a bit too far from a commercial application. That is, of course, something that is very important that we can do. Of course, the IP framework, which is way beyond Belgium, is also something, intellectual property, that is a huge driver in this industry, and that's something to keep in mind. There's some debate about this, which is fair. We have to understand that it is a key element of innovation. Of course, when you think about this, this clearly goes way beyond Belgium, but still important to put it on the table. Other places where public authorities can and have been playing a role, I think, for the better in Belgium, it's the simple quality service of its administration. I think here, what I hear from the actors is that in clinical trials, for instance, having an administration that is fast, quick, responsive, knows well and competent, it's something that makes quite a bit of difference. I'll keep on places that I think are also important for that ecosystem. There's also something to be said about some kind of coordination. It doesn't cost much money, but just a common view, a common vision, putting the different actors around the table, different stakeholders and actors around the table to kind of have a bit of a shared view for what the potential of a region or of a country and what would make sense. And out of the consensus, you create natural cooperation. And this is probably taken into account by the individual decisions for researchers and businesses. And then, of course, there's a number of other supportive aspects of environment in terms of taxation, etc. This is something that we think very often when you think of authorities, but I tend to believe, maybe you can contradict me, but that it is not top of the list. Conducive ecosystem. I think the other one, especially talent, is just typically comes way before that. On all those aspects, there's a few things that we must have done right. Maybe sometimes we wanted it, or maybe it just happened that way. But it's important that we read what is not right, what can be improved. And from that perspective, I'm not going to pretend that we know all. I think, as you know, the Prime Minister has relaunched that initiative to try to go rediscuss with different stakeholders to see how can we, as we've done well, how can we do even better in the future. So that will be a forum of dialogues that will be put into place and will be in the cabinet of Thomas Dermin.
Thank you for listening to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast. We hope the content was valuable for your business and that it meets your expectations. Do not hesitate to contact the BioWin team if you have any further questions or if you need more information on a certain topic.